call is now being recorded.
Welcome to MyBluesRoots.com. Palmdale Slim here with another very special guest today from the state of Texas. We have a real guitar master, Lance Lopez, here to talk to us about not only his solo career, but a great new project that he's got coming out this month with a new release and a brand new band. Welcome to MyBluesRoots.com, Lance. Great to have you here.
Hey, Mike. Great to be here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, I'd like to talk to you about the core of your music, which is obviously the blues. You're very rock-oriented sometimes in your approach and other times more bluesy. But no matter what you're playing, it seems to me like the blues is at the core of what you're doing. What is it about the blues that you love?
Well, I mean, it goes back, to my childhood. You know, growing up, originally I was born in Louisiana, so I was kind of surrounded by it. I moved to Texas when I was very young and grew up in Texas. But, you know, being born in Louisiana, I was just surrounded by all that, music just naturally and just really, it was all around me. I just, didn't even really know it. I was just right in the middle of it. And then I'd always kind of grew up in the era of, rock guitar, and everybody was playing. Grew up, I was a little kid in the 80s, so everybody was playing guitar, and guitar rock kind of dominated everything. And I was always drawn to the more bluesier music, and and when I was about 12, I guess it was, we moved to Texas. I was probably a little younger than that, but when I was 12, I was there, just moved to Texas, and saw Stevie Ray Vaughan and B.B. King perform together.
Right.
And,
now, how did that affect you? Yeah, that was big for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that pretty much set me on the course of where I was to head after that. I mean, that was the first blues jam I ever witnessed. So, I mean, that kind of solidified the whole deal for me. That kind of sealed the deal was, seeing that happen and just seeing that sheer intensity and power from both of those guys was just monumental. And so I just kind of was on a journey from there on out, and I went all the way back and began playing studying the acoustic Delta blues actually. After that, I kind of started from the beginning. So I just worked my way through all the electric guys, Muddy Waters and Alan Wolf, and into the, did the British blues rock bands and on down the line, all the way back to, Stevie Ray Vaughan and all the other guys that were playing around that time, that were playing, blues and more contemporary artists. So,
right.
It was a great, journey. And along the way, I met a lot of great people that helped me along the way, like Billy Gibbons and Johnny Winter and those guys, that were also from Texas, which just, it just expanded all of that knowledge, and they were just so gracious enough to pass on that, the knowledge of all the history of blues music,
even if it's just like turning you on to who to listen to, sometimes it's just as simple as that. Sometimes, I guess, right?
Absolutely. It definitely was. I mean, it was absolutely was. And growing up in the blues scene around Dallas and in Austin and all around the surrounding areas, I mean, there was so much of that was just. So many great blues musicians in those areas, but they would just constantly turn me on to stuff. And then, like I said, I would, be around Gibbons or be around, some guys that would further that, and not only just say, hey, go listen to this guy, but they would give me the entire history of this guy and, where he was from and how he developed his style. And so, a lot of that style really kind of started to make a lot more sense to me, kind of backtracking styles and so much more of the blues rock, I guess more of the British blues rock stuff made a lot more sense, after that. And kind of, well, this is where, that was kind of the emulation of this style or that style. So it was really, it's been a great journey, and I still to this day am on that journey,
Sure.
I mean, I'm always still, looking for, obscure blues music and is that draw from it, it's like, that's what I love so much about, and we had mentioned at the beginning of the interview here about, my rock style, and that's where I always was so intrigued by, bands like Cream and Led Zeppelin.
Exactly.
That would take from the acoustic Delta blues music and then revamp it or revitalize it. And that's one of the things that I like to do. And I really don't see a lot of that.
No, I saw a video of you doing Traveling Riverside Blues, and you did exactly that. It was very reminiscent to me of, Cream and Clapton doing Crossroads. And what is it about that approach that you think, but maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's kind of hard to play it, and maybe there's a lot of people out there that can't do it. What do you think is the reason why people aren't really taking that approach, as you just said, to the blues?
I don't know, but there was just so much of that legacy that should be carried on. And, the thing for me was that, especially with Robert Johnson, because, all those recordings were recorded in Dallas. I mean, most of them were recorded in Dallas, so they were recorded in San Antonio. So, they're part of Texas music history. It really is because, even though Robert Johnson was a Delta blues artist and he was from, the Delta, that still was recorded in Texas, all of it. So,
exactly.
There's so much of a heritage there for that. And, so therefore all that music was just so great. The lyrical content, the guitar, it's just amazing. And all the Delta blues artists, not just Robert Johnson, but there's so much material there to draw from and so much inspiration to draw from. It's like, why not carry that music into, the 21st century? Let's continue the legacy of it, but in a more modern stance and kind of energizing it, revamping it. And, that's what was so cool. And, it took me, through, listening to Cream and listening to Crossroads and looking at the album covers and reading who those original artists would be, and then backtracking from there, and going, wow, who is this guy? Who is, we would look at the Israeli Gears and go, look at Outside Woman Blues and go, who was Blind Joe Reynolds? Let's go find that guy,
Yeah, I did that all the time. Yeah, that's how I figured out who Skip James was from a Cream album,
Exactly. So, and that's, hopefully maybe that's what, somebody will do by me recording, some of that music and somebody that maybe wasn't, because Led Zeppelin recorded Traveling Riverside Blues too. They did a little bit different version of it, but, somebody in a more modern era that maybe, a kid that wouldn't know that either. They wouldn't know that, and that was still kind of obscure to know that Led Zeppelin recorded. They may know a Stairway to Heaven or whatever. They didn't know that they did some Robert Johnson. So, that's really kind of the point too, to keep that continuing on, that somebody could pick up a Lance Lopez record and go, wow, who is this guy that wrote this song? And let's go check it out.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's kind of the point,
Well, and, that's what I started doing when I knew I was going to be talking to you. I started checking things out. And I tell you what, I hadn't really listened to that much Lucky Peterson, but because I knew your association with him, I started listening to him, and, God, I fell in love with the guy. And tell me about your time with him, because, heck, you were pretty young. You'd only been playing guitar since the age of 8, and there you were at 18 working for Lucky Peterson, traveling all over the world. That must have been like, getting a college degree or something, right? Traveling all over the world. And what was that all about?
Absolutely. Lucky Peterson was, and still, to this day, he was one of the greatest musicians that I've ever shared the stage with. And he just was, he's a powerhouse performer. He's such a phenomenal artist. He's he's a master of both the Hammond B3 and the guitar.
I thought that is so great. I loved watching that.
Yeah, and he's just a powerhouse on both instruments, and I was able to learn so much of both with my time playing with him. I lived briefly in high school. We lived in Florida briefly, and I spent some time there. And so did Lucky. And so I'd heard his name around the area for a while. And then when we moved back to Texas, lo and behold, he was also in Texas as well. So We were running a lot of the same circles around the Dallas blues scene, and Lucky was beginning to really become a huge star in Europe. And so I knew a lot of his band members and hung around his band members. And I had actually gone out and played with Johnny Taylor before that, and was playing, all, backing guys like Bobby Blue Bland and playing with Johnny and out. I mean, we were always on shows with like these legendary performers. So after that that stint kind of happened, Lucky asked me to join his band, and he asked me to join up with him and do that. So that, I mean, it was a whirlwind. I mean, and, I'd known Lucky and he had played, we had played around in clubs together and jammed on stage together in different blues clubs and stuff. But when he hired me, we went, I'd never played out of the United States before. I'd never been out of the, overseas. I'd never been to Canada and I'd never played any foreign countries and Lucky took me all over the world. And I mean, I think the first gig I ever did with him was in Toronto, and it was at the Du Maurier Jazz Fest. It was a huge jazz festival, and I never played a gig that big. And then we went to the south of France from there, where we were playing, huge arenas and amphitheaters and all over France and everywhere else. So it was just this big whirlwind. Like I thought we were going to be playing blues clubs.
Right.
It was massive. It was this massive thing. And so, that's when I realized, I was like, wow. And to see Lucky perform at that time, this was mid to late 90s, to see him play like that and on these giant concert stages, it was really something to behold. He was quite a powerhouse artist. And I learned so much of my time being with Lucky, as far as even, guitar playing and keyboard playing and singing. So it was quite an experience.
Well, and I understand also while you were in Europe, you connected with Buddy Miles, who actually produced one of your early albums. Tell me about Buddy and what was that experience like? Because that's a whole different side of things to go from Lucky Peterson to Buddy Miles, right?
Absolutely. It was, we had met on I met Buddy, it was either in 96 or 97 and at the Belgium Rhythm and Blues Festival in Pier, Belgium. And, I was over there on the show with Lucky. And, of course, I was just such a disciple of Jimi Hendrix, and
sure.
And the Band of Gypsies album was just, a cornerstone of my guitar playing. And, and it was just a big deal to meet Buddy Miles and to hang with him. And we just, immediately he saw me play with Lucky and, he recognized that sound and that style immediately. And as we came off the stage, he was there waiting on the wings of the stage and said, man, we need to get together. We need to talk. We need to, I want to get together. I want to play. And I'm thinking, oh my God, well, yeah, I mean, you played with Jimi Hendrix, of course. Jimi Hendrix,
that's right.
Santana. I mean,
Hello.
I was just like, yeah, man, okay, I think, if Jimi Hendrix drummer wants to play with you, I guess you go play.
Yeah, you don't say no. You find the time, right?
Exactly.
But what was that experience like? What was that experience like for you musically? Because obviously you're exploring a whole different kind of music. And how did that expand what you do now?
It was really cool. I mean, it just, we really got to really a lot of groove oriented and very kind of groove and funk oriented kind of music, and riff. And I've had a lot of that kind of style, from playing and from living in New Orleans as a kid, having a lot of that. But this was a lot different. It was a lot more rock influence type of funk and groove. So it was very cool. It was a very cool experience, and we really we spent a lot of time working on a lot of things and writing riffs, and it really became really very riff oriented as far as writing was concerned. There was a lot of that kind of thing happening. So we spent a lot of time working on just that. I mean, Buddy both, he also was a multi-instrumentalist, and he played bass and guitar, and so, and he really, it was kind of a candid view into how Jimi Hendrix wrote, and he really shared a lot of that knowledge with me.
Interesting.
Of how Jimi Hendrix wrote music and how they put ideas together, which was, I mean, that's just priceless, you know. And,
yeah, sure.
It really
what
was.
Was that process like? Wow, what it was just like?
It was sitting around. We would get in a room with like a twin reverb, and Buddy would plug in a bass to it, and I would plug in a guitar to it, and then we would begin to just play, you know, and we would come up with patterns and riffs, and you know, he would write a riff, and we would jam on that for 15 or 20 minutes, and then I would come up with a riff in a different key. And so, and if you listen to a lot, especially a lot of the latter period stuff that Hendrix and Buddy and those guys were doing, it really it made a lot of sense, and it was about developed, and it was all blues based too. That's the other thing about it that really was they kind of demystified it, was, you know, that Buddy was able to sit down with me and say, you know, when we were listening to Ray Charles and Jimmy wrote this part, and then we were listening to Albert King and Jimmy wrote this part, and then we were listening to, you know, the Staple Singers and Jimmy wrote this part, and then we were, you know, it was like that. And then Howlin' Wolf, you know, then there's this Howlin' Wolf part, and that's where it really turned into, and it gave you so much insight into so much knowledge of that, you know, that it was all blues based, and it all was kind of it came from that, and that's where we you know, and it just all made sense, and that's what we would do. And then we would sit around and listen to some of those records as well, and that's what he you know, he would tell me, you know, he would say that Hendrix was such a fan of Elmore James, which you would think, wow, you know, I never really saw Hendrix playing much slide guitar, but he would say, you know, Jimmy was just a massive Elmore James fan, and you know, and it was just, you know, we would sit around and listen to that music, and he taught me how to develop those ideas as Jimmy would. You know, Jimmy would sit down and pick out just one little fragment of an Elmore James piece and turn it into a whole, you know, riff, you know, and
that must have been really a mind blower for you when you learned that, huh? That's really cool.
It really was. It really was. It was a really cool thing. And then also Buddy taught me, you know, to play drums. I mean, he really was, you know, taught me about pocket and about rhythm and about, you know, very much a 4 on the floor and keeping everything very solid and making sure everything is very rhythmic and solid pocket, you know. So it was quite an experience.
Well, that's great. Now it's 2003 and you're ready to launch your solo career. So after all of this stuff that we've talked about has influenced you, what are you saying to yourself now that you have your opportunity to do your own thing? What is that thing? What is it that Lance Lopez wants to do when he goes solo?
Well, you know, it just was kind of I was kind of just really, you know, at that phase of the game, I was just really kind of taking in from all the influence of that. You know, musically, it was really, a big part of it was, you know, having worked with Buddy and doing that. It really, you know, a lot of that, those early albums took on a lot of that influence, and a lot of that, what I just was talking about, you know, with the writing process and that, it really came out in that vein of music. And so, you know, we started the first record, and, you know, we began, working on it at the Dallas Sound Lab where, you know, which we had access to one of the greatest studios that, you know, Stevie Ray did 2 records at, and a lot of people were using in the 80s. It was a very, very well-known studio. And so basically, we, you know, we used we used a lot of the same stuff. There was actually, Stevie Ray actually left a couple of amplifiers
Oh my gosh.
At the studio. Yeah, he just left these Marshalls, and the owner of the studio pulled them out. Of course, he was, and a lot of it I think had to do with Buddy being involved too, because with Buddy Miles there, they were a little bit more adept to kind of pulling out some of that stuff. So they actually pulled out some of the some of these amplifiers. So it was pretty cool, to be able to use some of that gear.
To have access to that, sure. It changes your sound,
It was so hilarious too, just to think that Stevie Ray was here and he just walked off and left. Here, I'll come back and get him. He just left all these.
Yeah. Holy
at
cow!
The studio. Yeah, he had some great. There were some really great. It was like a green Marshall and a couple other really crazy, rare amplifiers you would never see every day. And he just left them there, like I'll come back and get them. And unfortunately, he never made it back to get them. But
yeah.
It really was, and they, of course, with Buddy being there, they were like, well, here, man, so there was all those kinds of things happening on the first record that was really kind of crazy, and it was, and it was really cool too. And then, and then the second album I put together with, my good friend Eric Gales.
Right.
Eric and I put that album together, and, it was really cool. We put that, and a lot of that had come from, what was really kind of funny about the second record was that there was supposed to have been a Band of Gypsies reunion, and, with Billy Cox and Buddy Miles, and instead of a, kind of your standardized, reunion where, they were going to bring in like, a lot of named guitar players like Slash and Steve Vai and these kinds of guys. They didn't want to just do a rehashing of Hendrix songs, and they had done that. They had done several of these Jimi Hendrix tribute albums, and they didn't want to end up doing Foxy Lady and Purple Haze and all these different kinds of songs. They wanted new material. They wanted to relaunch it as a new entity, with new songs and new stuff. So they had Eric and I write these songs for it, and that's what we began to do. And we started writing these riffs and these songs for the Band of Gypsies. I mean, we had certain guys in mind. Okay, well, Steve Vai is going to play a song. We want to have this song, and Slash is going to play on this. We want it to be like that. And we started putting together all this material, and then at the last minute, it didn't happen. The project actually fell through. And so I told Eric, I said, well, man, I'm going to go record all this stuff. We just wrote a bunch of great material.
Right. Why not?
And Eric said, man, let's do it. So again, we went back to the Dallas Sound Lab, the studio that Buddy and I had worked on my first record. And, we went in and we recorded, and, we recorded the second record, and I was very, very pleased with how it came out, and it really turned out really cool, and a lot of young guitar players come to me and tell me how influenced they were by Wall of Soul, how that record really was a big record to them. And like I said, it just came out with the fact that Eric Gales and I had just wrote all these songs for this Band of Gypsies game.
Yeah.
And it just didn't even work. So we just said, well, we're going to record them. And Eric said, you do it, and you go make it your record, and I'll help you put it together. And that's what we did. And, that's all we were trying to do was just put these songs out and put these records together. So, and those records kind of came out like that. So, it was kind of a cool thing. And around after that, we did a couple of records like that, and then it was kind of like, man, I was wanting to kind of get back to my roots and my Texas heritage and Texas roots, and kind of get back to that, and Gibbons again had re-entered the picture. Billy Gibbons had kind of re-entered back into back, and he'd kind of been keeping up with what had been going on, and he kind of came back to me and said, man, this is cool, and I love it, and it's great, he's like, but, you know, and Gibbons was, and, you know, I was playing Stratocasters mainly a lot. I still do here and there every now and then, but, and Bill came and said, man, you know, I really love it when you play your Les Paul. That's what I kind of built built our dynasty on, you know, and that's when you play that sound. And so, you know, it's like, and actually, oddly enough too, which is really crazy, is that B.B. King had just told me the same thing too. He was like, you know, man, he goes, you know, all the young guys are playing Strats, and Stevie Ray really sounded great playing Strat and this and that. But he was like, I think you need to try a Gibson guitar. You know, I think that's where, you know, you need to go. So it's like when Billy Gibbons and B.B. King are kind of telling you to kind of go this direction with your sound. It's kind of like, man, I think that's what I'm going to go try to do.
Yeah, I would listen. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, it was like, I think it's time to go ahead and let's try this approach.
So is that what you're playing on your latest album? Is live in New York City, right? And is that what you're playing the Les Paul in that? Gig, right?
You know, and it's like that's where it, you know, that was several years ago. So the sound. So all that being said, midway through my record, that sound, and that's where everything kind of changed. And I still get a lot of guys go, oh man, you know, wish you'd go back to the Stratocasters and some of that stuff. And it's like, you know, it was kind of like, and that was a moment in time in my life, and it was really great. I still love to do it every now and then, but that really was prompted to where, you know, I always played the Gibsons and always played those guitars and always played that stuff, but it really was that prompting that really led to that.
Interesting.
That sound and you know, and really, you know, we'd had so many guys that had come out and around the area that had really were, and I don't want to say this in any wrong context, but there had been so many guys that had kind of taken the Stevie Ray Vaughan approach, and I was kind of a product of the environment. You know, it was like I really was there in the same neighborhood, there in Oak Cliff, you know, there in Dallas, you know, and going back and forth to Austin and Dallas doing the same thing and running with the same people and the same set of friends. So it was like,
it was part of your life. It wasn't a poem.
It was part of your life. It was just being there in the neighborhood, but it was like, you know, and Billy and I had a conversation about it. And he said, you know, we have a legacy too that we need somebody to carry on. You know, there's guys that are kind of carrying on that have been carrying that flag, but not a lot of guys that carried on Johnny Winter's legacy or ZZ Top's legacy.
Right.
And, you know, and Billy and I kind of had the conversation. It was like, man, we need somebody to kind of carry our flag, you know, and carry on our legacy and expand upon that and bring that, you know, bring that back. Cause I mean, in the early 70s, we had ZZ Top and we had Johnny Winter, you know, those are the guys that kind of led the charge in that. And so, and it really made a lot of sense. And both Johnny and Billy Gibbons, I've had conversations with both of them, and it was, you know, and it was like that was a great period of time, especially for guitar playing. And they really both kind of looked to me as the guy to help them, you know, carry that legacy on and keep pushing forward with that. That just was it was a tall order for me to fill, but, you know, it's like, man, I'll go out there and give it my best, you know?
Yeah, why not? And speaking of Billy and that direction he was pushing you in, it sounds to me like your new project, the Supersonic Blues Explosion, that's your new band, going to be releasing an album later this month on the 26th called West of Flushing, South of Frisco. And I heard Billy playing on one cut. I think it was called Making Whiskey or something like that.
Running Whiskey,
Running Whiskey, that was it, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And tell me about that project, because that really does sound like you're doing exactly what you just talked about, taking that ZZ Top legacy and continuing it and taking it to a new place perhaps. But sounds like a great band, a trio. Tell me about them.
Well, Supersonic Blues Machine kind of came about with me contacting the producer Fabrizio Grossi, who is the bass player and the producer. And Fabrizio has done so many great albums. I mean, he worked with Glenn Hughes. He worked with Leslie West. And so many others. I mean, he did a lot of Joe Bonamassa's early records. And just on down the line. I mean, so many great artists.
Right.
And, and really it was, Leslie West's album, The Usual Suspects, that he did a collaborative album, and, it was he and Kenny Aronoff with the band on the record, and he had gotten Slash and Steve Lukather and all these guys to play with Leslie West. And so the guitar sounds and the drum sounds, just the sound of the album just blew me away. Mm-hmm. So I contacted Fabrizio and said, man, that's exactly, you know, what we're trying to achieve, that sound, that kind of, you know, hard rocking blues rock kind of sound. Let's get together and do something. And I had some gigs in LA. And so I booked some gigs and we went out to LA. And so I met up with Fabrizio while I was there and said, let's try to put some music together. And we did, and it just was, I mean, we walked in the room and we knew immediately. I mean, it was like, oh man, here we go. This is, you know, winning combination right off the bat. I mean, it was just a magical chemistry. And we were just going to, like, I was going to meet with him for an hour and just sit down and talk and see if we were going to even be able to do anything. And then, like, 3 days later, we left the studio. You know, it's like, I just went there to meet with him for an hour, and then 2 days later, it's like we got like 5 songs recorded. You know, so it's like, you know, and we walked out of there, and that's when it was like, man, this is, you know, we got to do something. And so Billy Gibbons called Fabrizio, and because he had been working with Billy on that last ZZ Top record, La Futura, and they had, you know, several other various projects. Billy had played on that Leslie West album that Fabrizio produced, and several other things. And so Gibbons called Fabrizio, and they began talking about what, you know, Fabrizio was working on and different things. And he said, and he goes, I just had this guy from Texas here in my studio. And Billy said, a guy from Texas, you know, I know everybody in Texas, you know, Billy Gibbons.
Right.
And he said, Lance Lopez. And then you know, Billy was like, what? Oh my God, you know, he couldn't believe it. And he said, you know, he told Fabrizio, I've known Lance since he was young, since he was a kid, and you know, mentored him and blah blah blah. And so Fabrizio then he said, you guys need to form a band, you know, a band with a band name, you know, like a band. And and the light bulb went off, you know, you guys need to put a band together. And so Fabrizio thought about it for a couple of days, and so he contacted Kenny Aronoff, who is just one of the greatest drummers in the world. You know,
I mean, he's played with everybody ever.
Yeah, everybody. So he contacted Kenny Aronoff and then brought some of those tracks that we had recorded that day and took them to Kenny and sat down with Kenny and played him the stuff that we had worked on. And I think Kenny was in immediately. I mean, you know, Fabrizio said halfway through the first song, he was like, I'm in. You don't even need to play me anymore. I mean, he was already there, you know, he was into it. So, you know, and then we got together with Billy and we recorded Running Whiskey, you know, the first track, you know, and then, you know, then Warren Haynes got involved after that, you know. Right.
And I listened to that song Remedy. That's a great song, Remedy. And, it sounded at certain points sounded very much like an Allman Brothers, 2-guitar thing going on there. That was pretty cool. I liked that.
Absolutely. It was just, you know, it became so surreal because, you know, when we began the project, it was just like, wow, this is just, you know, it started developing, and then we cut the song with Billy, and it was just so fantastic because it was like, man, I'd known Billy all these years, and it was like, and I'd opened for ZZ Top. I'd played shows with ZZ Top, you know, and been out and done this and that, but it was like to actually, you know, opening a show and playing a concert and all that's one thing, but then to actually have a recording together it began to become a reality, you know, and after all these years, and Warren Haynes has always been not only a good friend, but one of my, you know, favorite guitarists and vocalists and songwriters and just all around, you know, person. And so yeah, then Warren got involved with this. We had this song Remedy that they put together, and yeah, it was very much written in that vein. And and Warren knew how to design a song and that, and to put those parts together and to do that. And so, it was like, he comes from one of the greatest dual guitar bands and
right.
been in history,
Exactly. Yeah. He knows what he's talking about.
It was like he knew how to arrange that. And so it just was, it just was so great to take that approach where, playing with Billy, it was more just the hard driving, the thick, big, stomping ZZ Top sound to
Sure.
now we dialed it back and we're really playing guitar harmonies and parts that were
exactly,
intertwining and this big musical journey, that had that, like you said, that Southern Georgia kind of almond feel, and it was really, the message was really good. It was it's a message of hope and prosperity and healing, and it was just a really great message as well as a melody line, and then
it's kind of like an anthem almost, it's very very much like that, I think.
Yeah, and I just, it was just amazing to be a part of it, and watch it kind of develop from the ground up, and it's fantastic.
You had quite a few other special guests on that album too. I know your friend Eric Gales played on a cut too, right?
Absolutely, Eric came. Of course, I mean, like me and Eric have done so much together in the studio and live and everything else. Like I said, I mean, Eric and I are childhood friends. I mean, we've known each other since we were kids. And, so, there was no second guessing it when Eric, wanted to be involved. And that was the cool thing about Supersonic Blues Machine the cool thing about it is that, these are all our friends. These are all, not only are, these my favorite guitar players, but, my favorite guitar players also happen to be all my friends.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just such a blessing, to have them to actually all of us to be on a recording together and to be part of a monumental album, and it was just really, that's the great thing about it. So yeah, Eric, he wanted to be a part of, he found out what we had been doing, and I think I told him, I'm out in LA, we're working on this new record, and he said, man, I want to be on it. And I said, you got it, of course. I can't discount, Eric, who I just think is the greatest guitar player in the world. I mean, he's just, Eric's just, I mean, to me, in my opinion, I mean, Eric Gales is like our generation's Jimi Hendrix. I mean, he is of that caliber. I mean, and I know because I grew up with him, the ingenuity and just the sheer, vocabulary he has on the instrument, and, and he happened to be a left-handed player as well, although he's upside down. It's just, I mean, his the level of his veracity on that instrument it's unparalleled. I mean, completely.
So what are the plans? The album comes out on the 26th. It's called West of Flushing, South of Frisco. It comes out on February 26th. Are there touring plans at this point, or what's next for the Supersonic Blues Machine? I think I misspoke earlier. Supersonic Blues Machine.
We are going to. We're going. I think in the end of late spring, beginning of the summer, we're going to. I think we're gonna begin to start doing some things over in Europe. Actually, is what we've been saying. With some of the guests, which also include Robin Ford and Walter Trout.
Right.
Along with Eric, and I believe some of us are going. The hope is at some point to have all the guests, and we're actually planning on doing some of that towards the end of 2016. I do know that for a fact, is that we're going to have everybody together. We're going to have Billy and Warren and everyone that was on the album to do some performing with the group. But I believe in the early part of the summer. Latter part of the spring, we're planning on dates in Europe and the UK. So You know, we'll start with about 3 weeks over there and go out and do some select dates. And I believe they're saying it will end in the UK, and then we'll do. Then I think in the fall we're trying to amass plans to get everybody together for it. So yeah, so the tour dates are still in the works. Dates are still confirming. So we're
okay.
We're waiting on that right now, and I'm headed to LA next week to do some more things with Warren. I believe we're going to film a video for Remedy.
Oh,
so
terrific.
we'll actually have a video clip to go with our song that Warren and I did. So we'll we got a lot of stuff that we're working on, and hopefully, like I said, by the end of the year, by the beginning of next year, about a year from now, we should be having dates where everyone that's on the album will be involved in some performances. So that's the big hope right now. So I do
All
know
right.
that we're looking at the end of the spring, early summer to start touring.
Well, that sounds fantastic, and we've got listeners on both sides of the Atlantic here at mybluesroots.com, so everybody needs to, depending on where you live, look out for them, because that sounds like a great show coming up. And Lance, I just want to thank you for the time that you gave me today, and wish you all the best, and circle back with us and let us know whenever you have something new, we'd be glad to talk about it. And thanks for your time, Lance, and thanks for joining us at My Blues Roots.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.